Good day. Welcome to the Corey Morgan Show. Here we are. We're already into August. Summer's half over. It just barely got going, it seems to me. But what can you do? Enjoy it while you can, if the weather's good where you are, because it's fleeting. I'm in a grumpier than normal mood today. I'll get into a little more of that later in a bit. Lots of stuff going on. There always is. Sadly, most of the news usually just doesn't seem to be good. There's good stuff occasionally, but not enough for my liking. For those of you I see Paradoxy checking in, the guys who were watching it live, use that comment screen. Send comments towards me, towards my guests, ask questions. I mean, I don't necessarily read them all out on here, but I see them all and I appreciate it. Just remember to stay civil with each other. We got lots of time to fight. We got Twitter for that. I'll be talking to a guest in a short while. His name is Paul Coffey. He's a trustee, school trustee in Manitoba, and they've been working hard to cancel him because, he's been daring to speak his mind. That's not appropriate in today's world. So it'll be interesting to discuss what's going on out there. I mean, it's kind of an unfortunately common story, but we've got to expose and report on cancel culture, or we will end up canceled ourselves. All right, so let's get going on what one of the things I'm going on about today. And that's one of my favorite fellas, Nenshi, former mayor of Calgary. And yes, Nenshi has a history in Alberta, and much of it actually isn't very good. He's trying to hide from his own political baggage as he chases the premiership, and he's resorting to lies to do so. Being disingenuous is not new for Nenshi. He initially got elected as the mayor of Calgary on a platform of being business friendly, and he was anything but. Nenshi's relentless tax increases on city businesses actually drove owners to an unprecedented protest outside of Calgary's City Hall, where they had to beg for tax relief. The city was driving them right out of business. Nenshi's frequent departures from the truth have landed him in legal hot water as well. I mean, when Nenshi implied that Calgary businessman and philanthropist Cal Wenzel was an organized crime figure, the resulting lawsuit left Calgarian taxpayers with a legal bill of nearly $300,000 until Nenshi could convince enough friends to pitch in and cover it for him. One of those friends got a good contract, actually. He apologized and retracted the statement, of course, but it was clear, he waited until he was sure he was going to lose that lawsuit, and he was obviously going to lose it. And she also shared a bunch of bizarre fabrications about Uber while he was riding in a Lyft car in Boston. He lied and claimed the city of Calgary had tested the security screening of Uber by getting sex offenders through the process. I'm not even sure where he's going to say they came from, what sex offenders are us or something, or maybe he just happens to know a few of them. I don't know. But it was utter BS, and when the video surfaced, it looked like Nenshi was about to get his arse sued again. Uber had been trying for years to get into the city of Calgary, but they've been getting strong resistance from Nenshi, who appear to be pretty beholden to the Calgary's taxi cartels. But then when Uber was about to sue the mayor, Uber was suddenly approved as a service in the city, and the talk of the lawsuit dropped. Funny how negotiations change when you're about to be sued into oblivion. Now, though, Nenshi's taken to lying about himself. Well, it is one of his favorite subjects, I guess. Nenshi's biggest personal legacy and vanity project during his time as mayor is the LRT expansion called the Green Line. The problem is the Green Line has turned into an utter debacle. The size of the project has shrunken to a small fraction of what the original scope was, but the price tag has risen from $4.5 billion to $6 billion. And meanwhile, they've pissed away $1.5 billion into it. Not an inch of track has been laid yet. At this rate, it's going to be another decade before the Green Line ever gets out of the city's downtown, and the cost will probably double or triple by then. It's an unmitigated disaster. Nenshi's trying to distance himself from this mess by making his own historical revisionism going on. In 2015, Jason Kenney was a member of parliament. He announced $1.5 billion federal dollars for the Green Line. Nenshi at that time said the construction would begin in 2017 and be completed by 2024. Yeah, that's Nenshi's words. Now Nenshi's claiming, he didn't say anything like that, and that the funding was unexpected in 2015, and that's what led to the delays in the construction. He was actually blaming the feds for the delays in the construction because the feds gave him money. There's some sweet logic for you, isn't it? The province kicked in another $1.5 billion as well, by the way. Despite having all that money to play with, nothing got done under Nenshi's management. And while he's trying to blame other levels of government for the mess, it's simply BS. Jason Kennedy didn't beat around the bush on Nenshi's claims. He said, this is a broader problem the head has. He just makes stuff up. I think people call it gaslighting. Nenshi will say whatever he thinks he needs to say and pretend to be whatever he thinks he needs to be if he thinks it'll bring him closer to power. He lies without hesitation and refuses to take responsibility for anything that happened or didn't happen during his decade as a Calgary's mayor. Nenshi is a known quantity to Calgarian voters. Unfortunately for him, he's known for massive tax hikes, a dysfunctional city council, millions spent on a failed vanity Olympic bid, a downtown with massive commercial vacancy that's overrun with addicts, and a Green Line project that may prove to be the biggest municipal boondoggle in Canadian history. Instead of trying to explain or wear his legacy, Nenshi's trying to lie his way out of it. He's counting on the short memory of voters to try and win his way into the premiership of Alberta. Let's make sure we don't let Albertans forget what Nenshi's tenure as mayor was like. It reflects how well he would govern if he were to become the premier. Either way, that's what's got me going on Nenshi today. Let's see what else is going on the news. We've got Dave Naylor in studio to check in. How's it going, Dave?
It's going well, Corey. You should start saying what you really mean.
Well, I try to sugarcoat it,
Yeah, no kidding. Holy cow. Hey, big storm the other day. Any damage in the compound?
On our way, no. Just lots of terrified dogs and wet ground. But no, Pritis didn't get it too badly.
My daughter lives down near Vulcan. And her brand new Honda Civic now looks like a big red golf ball.
Yeah, the hail.
So many dimples.
Brutal.
It's just awful. Well, that's Alberta for you. Yeah, as you say, lots of stuff going on in the news. We're leading off with a story about from my homeland, actually, United Kingdom. Canada has issued a travel warning to all places of England. This is because rioting that has followed the murder of those 3 girls down in Southend. So ugly scenes up in England, and they're expecting lots more riots today. Kind of a funny one, in my opinion. Air Canada, they always, they can't get a plane to arrive on time. They now want to run a high-speed train service between Quebec and Windsor. And you know how we have no high-speed trains at the moment in Canada. We're sadly falling behind, and if Air Canada runs it, they're guaranteed to lose your luggage. So good luck to them. Still a developing story out of Rocky View County, east of Calgary. A tragic scene yesterday in which a Rocky View County worker by the name of Colin Howe was gunned down and shot. Fortis worker was wounded in the attack. Big RCMP manhunt for several hours. RCMP still haven't released any details on what really happened. I'm not going to steal your thunder because I know you got lots more to say.
I'll have a lot to say on that later on. Yeah.
The internet is certainly ablaze with rumors. I don't know if you saw the video yesterday of the anti-Israeli protesters in Toronto. They were trying to block. I think actually you tweeted it. They were trying to block, and a driver down there was having none of it, and sort of didn't run them over, but brushed by them. And the driver was charged. Or not charged yet. He's been arrested. Charges to follow, and of course, none of these idiots blocking the highways were charged at all. Got an interesting story on some poor guy in Fort McMurray. Remember during the COVID mask mandate, you couldn't go anywhere without a mask. So this guy is is battling cancer, and he had to go to a doctor's appointment in Calgary. And he got a note from his doctor saying he cannot wear a mask because he's got breathing difficulties. Despite that, WestJet said, no, you're not coming on board unless you wear the mask. So he was forced to drive 740 kilometers to visit his doctor. So he sued for $40,000, and the tribunal tossed it out saying Air Canada has to do what they has to do. And big news this afternoon, Corey, bigger than the rumble in the jungle. It's the Paris punch-up. A punch-up in Paris, and where the Algerian female boxer with incredibly leaning male chromosomes will no doubt pummel another hapless woman in certain victory and claim the gold medal. Is probably rightfully somebody else's.
Well, I hope nobody gets hit in the balls in that match.
No, it's a big controversy, and she is technically a woman, but she's got an unfair advantage because she's got all these male chromosomes. I think our Olympic reporter Jen Hodgson was saying something like 180% more powerful because of these chromosomes. So it's unfair, right? It just truly is. So you have some sympathy for the Algerian, but not a lot as she pummels the victims.
It's been an odd case. I mean, this shows where the world's become, though, where it even is in question then whether or not this was born a man or not, or if it's an unusual condition or something like that. Like 10 years ago, we would have assumed it's an unusual condition because you never would have thought that somebody potentially male might enter a female sport. But
and it initially came out, initial reports had her as transgendered. Which were not wrong. She's got all her lady bits, so to speak, and just has this incredible male advantage.
Well, I'm not going to watch the event. I don't like seeing women get beat up.
You got to cheer for the underdog.
Yeah, right? I guess so. All right. Well, Thanks for the update, Dave. And I'll talk to you after the show. Maybe we'll finally have an update on what the hell's going on with the murderers on the loose in Alberta right now.
I know you got more to say about that later.
Oh, yes, I certainly will. All right, thanks. So, yes, that is our news editor, Dave Naylor. Lots of stories on the go, guys. Constantly breaking. Watch the site. We've been updating that story actually constantly as the facts come out. Social media has been giving us a lot of the facts on what's been happening in Alberta because the RCMP won't. Go to westernstandard.news, guys. The stories break. We have reporters on the ground across the West and constantly are bringing stuff out. And the reason we can do that is because you guys have been subscribing. So thank you very much. We are truly independent. We don't take tax dollars. We aren't asking for tax dollars. But you got to subscribe. Get on there, westernstandard.news/subscription, $10 a month, $100 a year, just like a newspaper subscription. Keeps me working, keeps our producer working, keeps those reporters working. It's so important because, the mainstream news isn't covering this stuff for you. And I'll explain a little why again when it gets into this unbelievable story, this terrible story, what's going on in Alberta with this murdered young man and the other fella shot. Just bloody believable. Let's see. I'm going to speak as well about a sponsor because, yes, advertising helps pay our bills too, guys. And these guys are great. You might have heard me talk to him a little while ago, Colin Craig, about Canada's healthcare system, and it's broken. We got thousands of people dying before they're getting the care they need. Millions of people are on waiting lists, and it's getting worse. So how do we fix it? SecondStreet.org's brand new documentary, Health Reform Now, has the answers. Head to healthreformnow.ca and watch the full documentary. It's free. It's only 40 minutes, guys. It is a good watch. It doesn't just point out problems, which is kind of my specialty. It points out solutions, which is very important. Check them out, secondstreet.org. They're a great group, and it's healthreformnow.ca. All right, let's see. I'm going to hit a quick thing. Speaking of health reform and idiocy and part of why our system's broke or why we're broke or why our taxes are hitting us before I get to our guest here. And yeah, this ongoing thing through an access to information request found that, again, those Quebec-made COVID ventilators, which were made by a company that was coincidentally, certainly, owned by a friend of a Liberal minister, they ordered $231.7 million worth of these ventilators, which none were used, and they were all thrown out as scrap. This is your tax dollars at work, $28,000 per ventilator, and they were junk, and they were junked. We got robbed during COVID, guys. We got robbed. They used an emergency to rip you off, to line their buddies' pockets. And this didn't save a life now, did it? Because that's what they always like falling back to. Well, is it worth, we have to, if we could just save one life. This didn't save any lives. It probably made a few people's lives really comfortable because somebody pocketed $231 million, but the rest of us paid it out. It is just repugnant what these people do with our money that we work so hard for. All right, let's get on to another elected official. He's got nothing to do with the ventilators. He's got his own, I guess you could say, hornet's nest that he's poked, and we'll talk about that. His name's Paul Coffey. He's a trustee, school board trustee in Manitoba, and he's been the target of cancellation attempts. So welcome to the show, Paul. I appreciate you coming on and talk to us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Corey.
So I guess just I want to clarify everything. You're still a trustee. You were elected to that position out in Manitoba?
Yes, a school board trustee in central Manitoba, around the Dauphin area.
Okay, so I guess we'll start from the start. What did you do that got the hordes so horrified with you?
Well, I used to write policies and procedures for the school division, and it's coming up that the federal government allotted $80 million over the next 5 years in the 2023 budget towards anti-racism. They want to make a policy for the grade kindergarten to grade 12 schools or whatever. And I'm thinking, well, if you're going to make a policy, it has to be.
Looks like you might be freezing a little bit there, Paul. We'll just hang on a moment. Hopefully that coverage will pop back in there. Maybe we got a little bit of the Manitoba internet. Hopefully it's not on our end this time. I'll go on a little more, as Paul's connection catches up. He had spoken quite bluntly. He is of some Indigenous background, and he said some of the things we've heard from some other people. I mean, we can agree or disagree on it, but he'd said, that the residential schools weren't necessarily all bad. He questioned the narrative of it. He questions some of the terminology. He refers to, I mean, I admit it's hard to keep up. He used a term that most people stopped using when I was younger for First Nations people, Indigenous people, whatever it might be. I was kind of raised to call people natives. He used the term Indian. But we're splitting hairs. The thing is, what happened, though, is the swarm came after him. The bunch came after him, and they're basically demanding he be reprimanded, demanding he be ripped out of his position as a school board trustee. He was elected to that position. And of course, also with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, he questioned some of the findings and some of the statements made within that. Looks like he might be back on. We'll try again. Hey, how you doing there, Paul?
Talk about cancellation. Geez, just announce my name and I'm getting canceled.
Those internet giants are out to get you. So you probably didn't hear it, but I gave a little more background just on what's going on and why people are worked up with you. Where are things standing now, though? There's been is there an inquiry coming or a hearing or any of that, or is it still just people shouting for your dismissal?
Oh, no, they wanted me to resign publicly or whatever. And then the Minister of Education did have a governance review. So we had a third party come out. Actually, I'd like to announce I'm speaking for myself as a trustee, but not for our school board. That's kind of important me to clarify. So anyways, this governance review came out and did a review and said that we should be dissolved. That's what the minister says. And instead of dissolving our board, which doesn't happen, I think, very often across Canada, he appointed 4 trustees to our board. So they're non-voting trustees, and they're going to be involved in our meetings and see if they can change our mind on how we behave or how we run the school division, I guess.
So they'll just kind of appoint and stack your elected board with their own people, and then basically they can kind of override things.
Kind of what happened was one of our trustees had resigned to go work for our local MLA, MDP MLA. And so then we were down to 8 trustees, but then we ended up terminating our CEO. And so then 3 of the long-term trustees that were with the board resigned on the same day. And then, so now we're down 4. So I think the minister decided to appoint his own 4 trustees to be non-voted and non-elected or whatever. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it's fair enough that you point out, you're just one of the bunch. It doesn't mean you're setting policy or you're speaking for them. I mean, that's the point of having multiple trustees. You would hope that you get some diversity of view. What, though, compelled you then to delve into questioning some of the findings or statements in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission or some of the residential school theories, I guess you could say?
Okay, so with the anti-racism, so who couldn't argue against that? But to set my point is that anti-racism isn't going to work because the past history. So if you look at treaties were, and my presentation is called Nice Until It Isn't. So treaties were nice, and then they didn't work out. We started fighting about them, and they really didn't do anything. So even the Truth and Reconciliation with the land acknowledgement and stuff, it's been said over and over for the past 9 years. It's starting to cause more division than actual reconciliation. So same with the inclusiveness. So in our schools, we have a rainbow sign at each office. And I introduced, well, why don't we have a picture of Jesus with all these different colored children? That'd be more inclusive than, you know what I mean? If you're going to have one, you got to have them all. And that's what I said. It's nice, this inclusive, because they spent $80 million. It was in the same budget in the 2023 federal budget. They're going to have $80 million plus 25, I think, to implement inclusiveness. And that's not working. So all of these things aren't working. So if they're going to come along with anti-racism policies in our school, let's make sure it works. And the big thing that I'm arguing is that in that definition of anti-racism, they're going to use white privilege. And I said in their white privilege, you can't base privilege on a skin color. And the people that believe in that, they say, oh, well, that's not racist. And I'm saying, yeah, it is racist. And same with they talk about decolonization. They're the anti-racism, they're going to inject the definition of decolonization. And I'd argue is that we have a lot of federal schools. They're federal in Manitoba, and I think probably throughout Canada. The reserve schools are federal. So those reserve schools, they must be decolonized 100%. So how's the graduation rates working there? Do we need to decolonize our public schools or talk about white privilege when, yeah, it's kind of racist. So I'm saying we can't implement this unless everybody signs on, and people aren't going to sign on to white privilege and decolonization.
No, and that's the language of this. It seems, again, I don't know. We can question whether that's well-meaning, but it's getting more and more divisive. It's turning it into us and them all the time. And there's nothing worse than training children into that. Like, I'm with this team and I should be apologetic for something my ancestors did, or I'm with this team and I should be upset because of what that kid's ancestors did. Well, none of us are getting into a better place from any of this.
Definitely not. And if you look at the, it's called a Community Wealth Index, and it compares the Indigenous and non-Indigenous and how we are. And it's listed the past 40 years, but I'm sure it's the past 200 years that the non-Indigenous are 20 points ahead of the Indigenous. Like they're still living in poverty or oppression, and all the money we're putting in there isn't helping them. And a lot of people said with my presentation, they think I'm upset about money. And I just keep saying, and I think it was in my article with Western Standard, is that I'm not worried about the money. The money is just a financial injection into our system. But all this money isn't helping the oppression or how things are happening to this minority, this 4%. It's not making things better.
No, we can't see any measurable improvement. I've written columns on that as well. I would say, hey, if it worked, if I saw, the reserves having fantastic social, peace and good prosperity, well, okay, I can live with that. But they're in terrible condition and getting worse. So, I mean, it only makes sense that we can at least question what's going on. But that's what concerns me with your case is it's not even what you're saying, it's that you dared to question it that has them so upset. And we got to worry about that.
Well, there's even the in Manitoba, we have a high school graduation rates. And so that it's plain as day. The numbers show, well, it's kind of snowed over. And I think that's in my article, is that it shows that 81% or high percent that we're both graduating equally, the Indigenous and non-Indigenous. But the fact remains is that in grade 9, if people don't make their credits there, where the Indigenous aren't making their credits, to a 24% difference between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous. So they aren't making it to grade 12. In fact, from my understanding, I'm quoted the number 44, only 44% of Indigenous graduate in our school division. And as a school trustee, I'm concerned about that. And if they want to spend $80 million on anti-racism and implant that and implant this other thing, that's doing nothing for our graduation rates. As a school board trustee, that's my concern.
So as a trustee, as you pointed out, it's a little unique when it comes to First Nations reserves and such. They're federal schools. Does that still, though, fall under the umbrella then of the local elected trustees, or are those parallel schools to the other ones you're working in?
Those have their own, they're under a different school division. The federal schools are a different board, so they don't fall under me, but we do have reserves in our areas. And then a lot of the kids, the reserve, some of the reserve schools might only go to grade 8 or grade 9 or grade 8, I guess. And then they would come to our schools.
Yeah, so there's still a large number of Indigenous students within your classes, your schools, the rest of the public system. But the ones on reserve are a separate federal management. I just wanted to clarify that because it's kind of different from most people are used to.
They're saying about 23% are in our schools, and then the anti-racism thing, it starts to, there's also 17%, they call it IPOC, which I'm offended by all the name changes. And now they want to call IPOC as Indigenous People of Color. Well, I don't want to be called by an acronym, So anyways, there's 17% POC, which is people of color, and another 23% in our school division that are Indigenous. So that's close to 50%. And I see just in Manitoba here that in in another 5 years, there's going to be probably 75 or 80% brown and black people. So how is this anti-racism going to be working then, when that 4% of Indigenous are still going to be in oppression? So the anti-racism policy, I see not working.
Well,
For
and
one, they're going to use those definitions that a lot of people won't sign on to it. And plus, in the future, there is going to be no racism, because there's going to be equal portions of all colors of people.
yeah, well, and your job is to kind of give a high-level view of the education. I mean, you're not prescriptive. You don't deal with, straight into the curriculum or things like that. You're just kind of an elected oversight on the education system. And even if you have different views, I mean, everybody's intention theoretically is to make as good a system for everybody as possible.
Definitely. Mine is those graduation rates and all the things that we're doing, or the micro things. That's the other thing that really got people wound up, is I'm looking at micro or macro. The trustees look at a bigger picture of how the school division is running. And then we have people in the school division that are micro. They take care of how to support that. And they believe the things I was saying was really picking on what they're doing. And that's not it at all. I'm looking at the provincial implementation of a policy that needs to work. Who could be against anti-racism? Well, if you make a good policy, but it's going to be hijacked by these definitions that nobody's going to sign on to. So why do it? It's not going to improve our graduation rates.
Yeah, I get frustrated with some of the terminology when they shut down discourse as well. It's like, that Antifa, crazed leftists who protest on the streets. They label themselves as anti-fascist. And if anybody questions what they're doing, say, oh, so you must support fascists. Well, no, I just don't like what you're doing. And if they say something's anti-racist and you question part of their policies, they're going to say, what? Does that mean you're pro-racist? I mean, that's the game that's played, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I picture that it's all, and I'm Indian, and I think it's in my article. If people want to go to Western Standard, I have an article there. But I am Indian, and my grandma went to residential school, my dad went to residential school, and I went to a little bit of day school. So what I picture is that these initiatives are kind of latched on to this oppressed group, 4% in Canada. And if you say anything against it, like the inclusion or the inclusion was put out there to include the Indians or that Indigenous. But if you say anything against the inclusion, and you know darn well that that's been hijacked, if you say anything against it, then you're against the Indians. You're against it, blah, blah, blah. And same with the anti-racism. It's going to turn out, if you say anything, and maybe kind of like I am, it's turned into an Indigenous thing, because I'm a bad guy. I'm a racist, and I'm hateful. And yeah, it's not.
Well, it's hard to keep up with the words, generation by generation. It's the intent that matters, not the term. But the time passed quickly. So are you going to you're going to be running for election again then sometime soon, or is it a while yet?
It's another 2 years. So we have a by-election this fall, and hopefully we'll get four trustees on there. Sometimes I think with all this activity, maybe there'll be a lot of people wanting to be nominated or get nominated. So yeah, and then we'll have a full board of 9, and I'm not too sure what'll happen to those appointed board members, but we'll see how we work around that.
Well, and that's the way to deal with these things, the way it should be as well. We'll put it to the parents who are going to vote and choose who they want to be looking over the education in their area. So I appreciate you for being outspoken and providing the article for the Western Standard and for just taking a stand. So where can people kind of find you and keep track of you and your story?
I do have a email with the school division, so you can look me up at Mountain View School Division.
Okay.
There.
Great. Yeah, if anybody's interested in contacting you or things like that. Well, I appreciate it. We'll be watching what's happening over there and see what happens. Perhaps we'll have you on for a conversation again soon.
For sure. I'll keep you up to date. And thank you very much for having me on. I can have a chance to get my word out there. I've been pretty silent since April 22nd. So. Yeah,
well, and silence isn't the way to fix things. So thanks again. I hope you all come to a good resolution out there.
Perfect. Thank you, Corey.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, that was Paul Coffey. He's a trustee out in Manitoba there, as it's out by Dauphin. And I mean, these things go on and we forget the basis, forget what we're there for, forget what the point is. It's for the kids, it's stuff like that. And we get caught up with the terminology, the hangups, the other stuff, and we're forgetting the outcomes. Look at the graduation rates, look at the success rates. That's what matters. And this new woke approach to things isn't working. It isn't. I mean, if it worked, I'd support it too, but it doesn't. It stinks. It's getting worse every year. This is part of what's inspired a lot of the columns I wrote on this. I worked in the north, in the bush for 20 years, and I could see the state of people on reserves getting worse year after year after year. It didn't matter how much we spent, didn't matter how much we messed around with things, it kept getting worse. Should we not be allowed to call that out? And it's not calling out the people. That is wrong. Yes, if you try to say Native people are inherently inferior and that's why there's a problem, yeah, that's racism and that's wrong. But if you say the system is inferior and it's putting these people in a bad place, there's nothing wrong with saying that. That's a system you're attacking, not the people. But defenders of the status quo turn it around that way. They try to say anybody questioning the way things are right now must be a heartless racist, and that's not the way to go with things. Now, I'm going to talk about what I said has got me worked up. Dave talked about it a little bit. People in Alberta will be familiar with it, with what's happened. Yesterday, I was driving yesterday, a little bit after 1 o'clock, an emergency alert came over. It was beeping on my phone. It was on the radio. I was listening to conventional radio. They said, there's two extremely dangerous, they said, armed individuals east of Calgary. They gave the townships and ranges for the roads. They told people shelter in place, get in your homes, lock your windows, lock your doors. They're on the loose. And then they just left it at that. That was it. Nothing else was told. We weren't told if they were men. We weren't told if they were women. We weren't told if they were driving. We didn't know if they were white, black, purple. We had no idea. All everybody out in that area knew was that apparently there's two extremely dangerous people out there wandering around. Now, the details started creeping out through the day, and they came out through social media, not through the police. So people were locked down. Now, I'll give the details on what we know on what happened. And as Dave pointed out, so a man was murdered by two people. The RCMP still won't give us any bloody information. It sounds like a vehicle was burned out in the side of the road. The man was a young man. He's a father. And he had pulled over. It sounds like maybe a Fortis employee had pulled over first. He was shot and wounded. The second one was a county employee who pulled over. He was shot. He's a young man and killed. And then they stole the county truck. This I know because on the Strathmore Facebook group, locals were posting pictures of the stolen truck bouncing around through the field with the murderers in it. But the RCMP still didn't tell anybody that a county truck with murderers in it was driving around their neighborhood. Why in the hell would they not tell the public about a vehicle that identifiable with known murderers in it and say, hey, watch out for this friggin' thing. You might get killed. If this sounds familiar to you, remember what these dumb buttholes did in Nova Scotia only a few years ago. A lunatic was rampaging around in a fake RCMP car. He killed 22 people. It was the worst police failure showing incompetence, disorganization, and idiocy on the part of the RCMP in known history. 22 people died. And never did an alert go out to people saying, hey, watch out, there's a fake cop car driving around with a nutcase in it that's shooting people. You know, some lives might have been saved if they'd have just said that. But they didn't, because the RCMP in Canada goes silent. They don't believe we are allowed to know what the hell is going on. So these two unknown murderers are still on the loose. This is the last information we know. The RCMP, they got away. They ditched the truck. A man is dead. A man is wounded. We don't know where they are. We don't have any direction where they went. We don't know if they're male. We don't know if they're female. We don't know anything about them. The RCMP know this because one of the people they shot was only hit in the arm and he survived. He probably had a description. He could probably say they were two men or two women or two elephants or whatever the hell it was. But the RCMP won't share that with us for some reason. Why? Why have they got a cone of silence while we have murderers driving around the province of Alberta right now? Right now. Shouldn't we know what we're supposed to be looking out for? No, they won't tell us. It's insane. And, you know, this made it all the more dangerous when it was in a county truck with the branding and the logo on the side. Because if you're a rural person, even if you knew the emergency was going on, you know, people, even if it wasn't the wise way to go, see something like that as an authority figure or somebody they could trust. If they saw that coming up the driveway, they might have thought, oh, it's somebody from the county. Maybe the emergency's over. I'll come up my front step and see what's going on. And they would have been shot. They also, if we wanted to catch these guys, you had hundreds of people around there who could have been watching. In fact, they were posting it on Facebook. You get more information from Facebook than the bloody RCMP. And they're saying the truck is here. The truck is there. The killers are here. The killers are there. The locals tracked the killers. The Keystone cops with the RCMP friggin' didn't. So they got away. So they're out now. So they might kill more people. They might kill another young father. Because the RCMP doesn't like sharing information with you. It's been almost 24 hours since this happened, and the RCMP still hasn't told us a damn thing. We found out in the newsroom that there was a man killed and who it was because the county put a release out for the victim on their site, the Rocky View County site. And check out the Rocky View County site. Google the man's name. I'm sorry, I don't have it handy with me right now. And look on the Western Standard. We have the young man's name. There's a GoFundMe, of course, for his family. He's a father. And watch out, people. I don't know what you're supposed to watch out for. All we do know is that there's two dangerous murderers bouncing around the province somewhere right now. And the RCMP is refusing to tell us who they are, where they're going, what they look like. So whose fault is it if these guys kill more people? You know, like, this is insane. Not just insane with the stupidity, but the stupidity that the friggin' RCMP has done this before. And they haven't learned a thing. You go to the Alberta RCMP X posting site page, and I've been beating the crap out of them on there, and they deserve it. They're posting fluff. Oh, hey, everybody, watch out. We're doing an RCMP dog training thing in your area, so you might see a puppy. Oh, yeah, well, by the way, since you're at it, why don't you tell us about the two murderers you misplaced, you idiots? What is your job? Who do you serve? Who do you answer to? Who pays your friggin' bills? We do. You're supposed to protect us. You don't hide information from us, you incompetent boobs. You warn us. You let us protect ourselves. You know, I've talked about getting provincial police force for a long time. I had the RCMP union guys on there making excuses. They've come on my show to tell us why we have to stick with them. You know what? Screw you guys. Hey, we can screw up and make a bad provincial force. So we better make a better force than them when we bring in a provincial one. But I really see nothing to lose in dumping the RCMP right now. So either way, let's hope that these incompetent boobs manage to catch the murderers wherever they are and stop them before they kill another young father. You know, there's 4.5 million Albertans who would love to lend their eyes to it and help find these murderers. They're walking the streets in every corner of this province, but they need to know what they're looking for. And the RCMP won't tell us. Why? Why? There's no excuse. It's just disgusting. I'm disgusted with you. You know, I speak of the RCMP, not disgusted with you guys, the viewers. But what the hell is going on? What is the matter with you guys? 24 hours later. And so what is this telling me? I'll tell you what it's telling me. It's telling me, go to social media to get your news about crime. Screw the RCMP. They won't give you good information anyways. And they won't protect you. This is one of the posts from that Strathmore site, actually, as a matter of fact. This is what somebody posted after they had all the discussion between all the people living out in that area discussing where these killers were, while the RCMP, I don't know what they're doing, playing a game of strip poker or something, whilst they got away. This guy says, so the best thing everyone can do at this point is arm yourself and do whatever's necessary to protect yourselves and your family. The RCMP just gave up. They've failed the Strathmore area more than once, and honestly, we the people should end this quite simply. I'd be locked and loaded and sighted in. You know what? He's right. You might as well protect yourself. The worst thing is, unfortunately, not everybody's trained for that sort of thing, so it might lead to another accident. But what else are you supposed to do? The RCMP, these Keystone idiots, these Clouseau-esque clowns, aren't keeping you safe, and they should get the hell out of Alberta. All right, that's enough out of me. I'll get on to something a little lighter, somebody I love. Cyclists. So we've got Sean Pulzer. He's out in Pritis at the Water's Edge Pub, and he's been speaking to the owner out there. Let's bring him in and see what's going on out that way. Hey, Sean, how's it going?
It's going good, Corey. How are you?
I'm a little worked up.
Yeah, I noticed, but in a good way, righteously so.
Well, I hope something good or kind of eventually a resolution comes to this. So what are you doing in the bar I used to own?
In the bar you used to own, well, I'm ordering the chili, which happens to be amazing. It
Oh,
comes
good.
in a little cast iron pan with a garlic toast, and it's highly recommended. But actually, I'm working on a story about the war of wheels that's going on out here in Prentice. It came as a result of some of your posts on Twitter about the cyclists that are coming in from the city, attracted obviously to the natural beauty of the community here, and the good hometown local vibes, and maybe even the chili. But it's creating a bit of tension with the locals in terms of some of the parking, and maybe just kind of loving the place to death. Kind of like what we hear about is happening in Europe.
Oh yeah, I mean I enjoy my place out in Prentice, but suddenly on a nice weekend morning, these spandex-laden locusts just descend on our area and block the roads. And well, you'll write a lot about it in the story and some of the reasons locals have kind of hit the end of their rope out that way with them.
Well, I've only seen one so far today. It's been raining, and so this guy's a diehard, right? When he's out there pedaling in the rain. But yeah, I've only seen one so far today.
There's a few of them in the winter as well, but yeah, we're in cyclist prime time once it gets nice out. So all right, since I got you, what you're our energy and business writer. What have you got on the go?
Well, I had a really good one today. So Suncor came out with its annual, second quarter earnings. Production averaged about 800,000 barrels in the first half, which is cracking, for the world's largest oil sands producer. And they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is producing oil and gas. So a year ago, the CEO got into a bit of a pickle when he sold off all the renewable assets and, decided that they weren't going to be a part of the so-called energy transition. And they were going to focus on going back to what they do best, which is producing oil and gas. So in the year since Rich Kruger made those comments, he was hauled up in front of a Commons committee and accused of burning down half of Alberta, with wildfires. The stock's up almost 30%, and it's up about 6% today. So it's, we've heard all these stories of these companies, going woke and going broke, and Suncor is not one of them, pleased to say.
Well, an oil company daring to be an oil company, the gall of them.
Who would have thunk? Exactly.
Do you think this might lead to a bit of a trend with other energy companies? I mean, just quitting, they might just stop apologizing and being who they are?
Hopefully. I think that would be a good start. I mean, this kind of leads into my second story, which is about Bill C-59. So Suncor is also a member of this Pathways Alliance that have been, so C-59, in case you don't know, is the Greenwashing Act. These companies where they're not allowed to promote the environmental benefits of their products, without proving them. And so it's mostly aimed at oil companies, but some people say, Dawn soap, they advertise that they clean the ducks, right? Or, Alberta beef cattle, that they produce less fart gas than, half so much fart gas in cows in Europe, right? So, but they have to be able to back up these claims. And so I wouldn't expect Suncor, to abandon, its emissions reductions commitments altogether, but at the same time, C-59, so they've all had to kind of collectively go and withdraw this information from their websites, from the federal government, and actually withdraw some of these targets. So remains, I doubt that it means that they're going to abandon, emissions reductions altogether, but federal government sure isn't making it any easier on them.
If you're not going to get credit for it, there's really not much sense in pushing it anyways.
What's the business case?
Yeah. All right. Well, it's interesting stuff. I'm still happy to see them kind of showing some courage on their part. So I'll let you get back to that chili there. Say hi to Tom and Brenda for me then, and
I sure will.
See you when you get back to the newsroom.
I don't know if the place looks any different than when you were here. It looks maybe they took it up a notch.
Yeah, they renovated it. I was more of a dive. All right. Thanks, Sean.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Craig. Bye.
All right, so yeah, on the road, that's our news and energy reporter, Sean Polzer, out in Pritis, Alberta. And yeah, watch the Standard. You know, he's always on that stuff, and it's great stuff with what's going on in our energy sector and the real business news involved with it. So earlier, yes, I'd forgotten his name. Embarrassing. His name was Colin Howe. I think I may be pronouncing it wrong. Hough. There's actually a GoFundMe for him. This is the man who was murdered, whose killers are still on the lam in Alberta. And the RCMP still won't tell us anything about them or where they are. All they know is they misplaced them. Hopefully they don't kill more people. He worked for the county of Rocky View. He was a father. He's a young man. He's dead. And we may never find the killers because the RCMP won't tell us what they look like, where they went, or any other details. Yeah, that's the unfortunate realities of our news today, guys. Either way, try to enjoy other aspects of the summer, but honestly, be careful out there. These killers could be anybody. The RCMP won't tell us who they are. They might be next to you right now. We don't know. We're not allowed to, apparently. And yeah, stay safe out there, guys. Enjoy the summer. Be sure to tune in to the Pipeline. We'll be on with a panel, discuss a bunch more issues a little later tonight. And yeah, keep going to the Western Standard for your news. We've got it as it breaks, guys. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll see you all next week at this time.